On the evening flight to Chicago, the business class cabin slowly filled with tension. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the famous children's heart doctor, tried everything to calm her crying daughter Sophia, but nothing worked. Her screams filled the quiet plane, making passengers angry and flight attendants nervous. Elena felt her face getting hot with shame as everyone stared at her. And then, in all that stress and anger, Marcus Chen, a single dad from the cheap seats, stood up and walked forward. What he did next shocked everyone. The cold winter evening covered Denver Airport in white snow as people got on Flight 892 to Chicago. One of them was Dr. Elena Vasquez, 32 years old. Even in a crowd of strangers, people noticed her. Her dark blue doctor coat looked expensive and important. Her black hair was pulled back neat and tight, but she looked very tired as she walked down the narrow plane aisle. In her arms was 18-month-old Sophia Vasquez, wrapped in a soft yellow blanket her grandmother had made. The baby's face looked angry, which meant trouble was coming. Elena had become one of the youngest doctors in the country to fix children's hearts. She was famous for saving babies that other doctors said couldn't be saved. Medical magazines called her the heart miracle doctor. But under her calm outside, she was falling apart. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours in a row since her wife Carmen died suddenly 6 months ago. The big meeting in Chicago could help her start a new program to save hundreds of kids' lives. The papers in her black briefcase were everything she'd worked on for 2 years. She couldn't trust anyone else to show them to the hospital bosses. Carmen was supposed to come with her. Carmen was going to watch Sophia while Elena gave her big presentation. Now Elena had to do the most important thing in her career all alone, with a baby who had been crying all day. When Carmen died, Elena's perfect world broke into pieces. They had been together since medical school. Carmen was the warm, happy nurse who taught Elena that helping people was about more than just being a good doctor. "You can fix their hearts," Carmen used to say, "but I help them remember how to be happy." Now Elena felt like her own heart was broken every day. She tried to work normal, but being a mom had made it impossible to keep her feelings locked away. Elena sat in seat 3A with Sophia against her chest and tried not to think about Carmen. She had learned in medical school that doctors had to keep their feelings separate from their work. But being a mom had made that impossible. In the back of the plane, Marcus Chen helped his 9-year-old son, David, put his small music instruments in the seat pocket. Marcus was 38 years old and moved like someone who had learned to find good things even when life was hard. His hands were rough from years of playing guitar and piano. He helped David arrange his tiny harmonica, wooden flute, and small keyboard. David looked up at his dad with eyes that seemed older than 9, but still believed his father could fix anything with music. Marcus used to teach music at a high school before his wife Alice died in a car crash 2 years ago. The sad part was that he had spent his whole career teaching kids that music could say things that words couldn't. But when Alice died, even music stopped making sense. It took David, who kept saying, "Mommy's songs are still here, Daddy. We just have to remember how to hear them," to bring music back into their lives. Now Marcus taught music lessons in people's homes. He built their whole day around David's school and piano practice. This trip to Denver was for a class about using music to help sad children. He hadn't wanted to go at first, but it taught him new ways to help people feel better. They were going back to their small house outside Chicago, where Alice's violin still sat by the window, and where David's songs, amazing for a 9-year-old, covered the refrigerator door. The plane moved away from the gate as flight attendants showed everyone the safety rules. In business class, everything was quiet and professional. Doctors looked at patient files, scientists prepared presentations, people rustled important papers as they got ready for the 3-hour flight. The cabin lights got dimmer and warmer, and for a moment, everything seemed perfect. Then, Sophia started crying. The first scream cut through the quiet like a knife through glass. Elena's whole body got tight right away. Her heart started racing with the special kind of panic that only new moms know when their baby cries in public. She lifted Sophia to her shoulder and patted her back the way she'd learned from YouTube videos she watched at 3 in the morning. But Sophia only cried harder. Her tiny face turned red with anger. "Shh, sweetheart, Mommy's here," Elena whispered. but her voice could barely be heard over Sophia's screaming. She tried everything: the bottle she'd made ready, the pacifier, the gentle bouncing that sometimes worked at home. Nothing helped. If anything, Sophia seemed to know her mom was getting more upset, and her cries got even louder. The angry looks came fast. A lady with gray hair in seat 5B, wearing expensive jewelry and a mean face, turned to the man next to her. She spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "For what we pay for business class, you'd think they wouldn't let people bring screaming babies on the plane." The man, whose gold watch caught the reading light, nodded hard. "It's rude, really. Some of us have important meetings tomorrow." Across the aisle, a businessman Elena knew from a medical conference last year was already pushing his call button. When the flight attendant came, he didn't try to keep his voice down. "This is not okay. Can't you do something? Move them to the back, maybe." The flight attendant, a young woman whose name tag said Jessica, kept smiling but looked scared. Her eyes jumped back and forth between the angry passengers and Elena. "I'm so sorry about the noise, sir. Maybe I could bring you some free headphones that block sound." Elena's face felt like it was on fire. These people knew who she was. Some of them had heard her speak at medical meetings. Now they looked at her like she was just another mom who couldn't control her kid. She wanted to stand up and remind them that she saved children's lives for a living. But Sophia's crying made it impossible to speak. Her nice shirt was already wet with sweat and what she thought might be baby spit up. The businessman in 2B was close enough that Elena could smell his strong cologne. He leaned over and said, "Maybe you should have gotten your own private plane if you had to travel with the baby. Some of us are trying to work." He pointed to his laptop where she could see numbers that were wrong, but she couldn't say anything. Sophia's cries got even louder. The sound bounced off the plane walls and seemed to multiply. Elena felt tears starting in her own eyes. She had talked to the biggest hospital bosses in the country. She had saved babies that other doctors said would die. She had built her whole career on staying calm when things went wrong. But she couldn't make her own daughter stop crying. What kind of mother was she? What kind of woman was she really under all her success? In seat 27C, Marcus heard every cry clearly. He knew that particular sound. It meant the baby was too upset, too overwhelmed, caught in a cycle where she couldn't stop being upset. Next to him, David looked up from his book about magic and dragons. "Dad, that baby sounds really sad. Like I was after Mommy went to heaven." Marcus's throat felt tight. He remembered those nights too well. David crying until he could barely breathe. Marcus feeling helpless when David's sadness was too big for a 7-year-old to handle. Marcus had learned by trying lots of different things what worked. The right way to move while holding a child, the low humming that seemed to touch something deep inside. The way to hold a kid so they felt completely safe. "Stay here, buddy," Marcus told David, taking off his seatbelt. "I'm going to see if I can help." The walk from coach to business class felt like crossing a war zone. Flight attendants were worried as he passed the curtain that separated the cheap seats from the expensive ones. People from coach weren't supposed to go to business class without being invited. But Marcus had spent years running into burning buildings while other people ran away. This was nothing compared to that. What he saw in business class was worse than he had thought. The young mother, he could see she was young even though she looked important, seemed about to fall apart. Her hands shook as she tried to give the baby a bottle. He could see tears in her eyes that she was trying not to let fall. The other passengers had made a circle of judgment around her. Their disapproval was as thick as smoke. Marcus walked up slowly, making sure Elena could see him coming. He kept his voice low and calm, the same voice he'd used with scared kids at school. "Excuse me, ma'am. I know you don't know me, but I've been where you are. My son went through a time where he cried for hours every night. Would you mind if I tried something? Sometimes a different person holding them makes all the difference." Elena looked up at him, and for a moment her doctor mask slipped completely. He saw raw desperation, the kind that made people do things they'd never normally think of. He looked around the cabin at all the watching eyes. He saw her think about the risk of handing her baby to a complete stranger from the cheap seats. Her reputation was already ruined for tonight. What did she have to lose? Yes, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Her name is Sophia." Marcus took the baby with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent many nights walking crying children through dark hallways. The first thing he did was change how Sophia was positioned. He brought her up against his chest with her ear pressed to his heartbeat. Then he started moving. Not the scared bouncing Elena had been doing, but a slow, steady rocking that was like walking. "Hey there, little girl. I know. The world's too big and too bright sometimes, isn't it? But you're safe. You're okay." He started humming, an old song Alice used to sing to David, something her grandmother had taught her. The tune was simple and repeated, designed to match breathing and heartbeat. The change wasn't instant, but it was amazing. Sophia's cries began to hiccup, then got softer. Marcus kept up the steady movement, one hand supporting Sophia's head, the other patting a slow beat on her back. Within 3 minutes, the baby's eyes were getting heavy. Within 5, Sophia was asleep, her tiny hand holding on to Marcus's shirt. The business class cabin went completely quiet. Even the gray-haired woman who'd been complaining seemed frozen, her mouth open like she'd forgotten what she was going to say. The businessman slowly closed his laptop. Jessica, the flight attendant, stood in the aisle with tears in her eyes. "I've been flying for 6 years," Jessica said softly, "and I've never seen anything like that. You're like some kind of baby magic person." Marcus smiled a little, still doing the gentle rocking even though Sophia was deep asleep. No magic to it, just experience and patience. Babies can feel stress. The more worried everyone gets, the more they cry. It's a bad cycle. He looked at Elena, who was staring at him like he'd done a real miracle. "She's a beautiful girl, just overwhelmed, that's all." Carefully, Marcus gave Sophia back to Elena's arms, showing her the exact position and rhythm to keep. "Hold her up high like this so she can hear your heartbeat. Try to keep your breathing slow and steady. She'll copy it after a while." Elena took her daughter back, her hands much steadier now. "Thank you," she breathed. Those 2 words had more weight than any of the medical awards she'd won. I can't tell you what this means." Marcus started to go back to coach, but Jessica stopped him. "Sir, we have an empty seat here in business class. Given what just happened, I think it would be good if you stayed close by, just in case." She looked at Elena, who nodded quickly. "My son is in 27C. I can't leave him alone." "I'll bring him up," Jessica said right away. "There are 2 empty seats together in row 6. And so Marcus found himself sitting in business class for the first time in his life, David next to him with wide eyes at the bigger seats and extra room. David had brought his book but seemed more interested in watching Sophia sleep peacefully in Elena's arms. "You did a good thing, Dad," David whispered. "Mom would be proud." Hearing about Alice sent the familiar hurt through Marcus's chest, but it was softer now, worn smooth by time like a stone in a river. "She would have done the same thing, buddy. She always said helping someone costs nothing but means everything." Elena heard them talking and something in her chest relaxed. She'd been so focused on keeping her image perfect, on being the perfect doctor, that she'd forgotten how powerful simple human kindness could be. This man, this stranger, who clearly had his own problems, had seen her drowning and helped her without thinking twice. "I'm Elena," she said quietly, not wanting to wake Sophia. "This is my first time flying with her alone. Actually, it's my first time doing most things with her alone." "Marcus," he replied, then pointed to his son. "This is David. He's my partner in pretty much everything these days." David smiled big at being introduced. "I'm 9 1/4, he announced in that serious way kids had of counting time. "I like books about magic and playing piano and helping Dad fix things." "Sophia's very little. Was I ever that small?" "Even smaller. You were born early, spent your first month in the hospital. Your mom and I took turns, so you were never alone." Elena caught the past tense, the careful way he talked about his wife. She recognized the sound of loss in his voice. She'd heard it in her own when talking about her father, who died when she was in medical school just before she'd started her heart surgery training. He'd never seen her success,
Never knew he'd raised a daughter who would save hundreds of children's lives. "You're raising him alone?" Elena asked gently. Marcus nodded. 2 years now. His mom was a nurse at the children's hospital. We worked at the same place. He paused, choosing his words carefully in front of David. There was an accident, a drunk driver. Alice didn't make it. The weight of those simple words hung between them. Elena thought of all the times she'd felt sorry for herself for doing this alone when Marcus had no choice in his loneliness. "I'm so sorry," she said, meaning it completely. "That must be incredibly hard." "It was," Marcus said honestly. "Some days it still is, but we found our way, didn't we, buddy?" He messed up David's hair. "We learned that cereal for dinner is perfectly fine sometimes, that socks don't have to match, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is just show up and try your best." Elena looked down at Sophia, still sleeping peacefully. "I don't think I know how to try my best at this. I know how to run an operating room, how to fix hearts that other doctors say can't be fixed, but I look at her and I'm scared I'm going to mess up somehow, that I'm not enough." "Can I tell you a secret?" Marcus leaned in like he was sharing something important. "That fear never really goes away, but it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. The fact that you're scared means you care. The parents who think they have it all figured out are the ones that worry me." Their talk was interrupted by turbulence, sudden and violent. The plane dropped hard, then jerked up. The cabin lights flickered. Passengers gasped and grabbed their armrests. Sophia woke up screaming, her little body stiff with fear. Elena panicked, her arms getting tight around Sophia, which only made her cry harder. The plane shook again, worse this time. Someone's drink crashed to the floor. The overhead bins rattled loudly. In all the chaos, Elena felt herself falling into complete terror, not just from the turbulence, but from being totally out of control. She couldn't protect Sophia from this. She couldn't use her medical skills against gravity. Marcus moved without thinking, pure instinct from years of emergency training. He reached across, not taking Sophia, but making a protective space around both mother and child. One arm braced against Elena's seat, the other helping support Sophia's weight so Elena didn't have to fight the violent shaking alone. "Look at me," he said firmly, his emergency training kicking in. "Elena, eyes on me. Breathe in through your nose. Count of 4. Hold it. Out through your mouth. Count of 4. The plane is fine. This is normal turbulence. You're safe. Sophia's safe."
Elena locked eyes with him, finding something steady in the storm. His eyes were calm, sure, the kind of presence that made people believe everything would be okay, even when the world was falling apart. She matched her breathing to his counting. Slowly, her panic went away. "Now, Sophia needs to feel that you're not scared," Marcus continued, still keeping that protective position as the plane bucked again. "Sing something. Anything. Doesn't matter if you can't sing well. She just needs to hear your voice being calm." Elena's mind went blank. The only song she could think of was something Carmen used to sing, an old Spanish lullaby about stars and dreams. Her voice was shaky at first, barely heard over the sound of the struggling engines, but Marcus nodded encouragingly, and David, brave little kid that he was, started humming along even though he didn't know the words. Slowly, bit by bit, Sophia's cries got softer. The turbulence continued for 5 more minutes that felt like hours. But wrapped in this strange bubble of protection, Marcus's steady presence, David's sweet humming, her own voice finding strength, Elena discovered something she'd lost, the ability to be vulnerable without being weak. When the plane finally got steady, the captain's voice came over the speaker, saying sorry for the unexpected rough air and promising everyone they were through the worst of it. Marcus slowly pulled back, giving Elena her space back, but she found herself missing the safety of his presence right away. "Thank you," she said, and then surprised herself by adding, "I'm not used to needing help." "Neither was I," Marcus admitted. "After Alice died, I tried to do everything myself, almost killed myself trying before I realized that taking help isn't weakness, it's smart. We're not meant to do this alone." Something in those words cracked open the wall Elena had built around her heart. All the pressure she'd been carrying to be perfect, to never show weakness, to prove she could have it all,
suddenly seemed too heavy to bear. To her shock, she felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said, embarrassed to be crying in business class in front of strangers. "I don't usually—" "Dad cries sometimes too," David said matter-of-factly. "He says tears are just love with nowhere to go. When he misses Mom, he cries, and then we make hot chocolate and look at pictures and tell happy stories." Marcus's face turned red a little at his son's honesty, but he didn't deny it. David's right. Crying is just part of being human. Even famous doctors are allowed to be human. Elena let out a sound that was half laugh, half cry. "I don't think that was in my contract." "Might want to ask for a new one," Marcus said with a gentle smile. "I hear the benefits of being human include real friendships, real happiness, and being able to ask for help without the world ending." They talked for the rest of the flight, their conversation flowing easily. Marcus told her about his work as a music teacher, how he'd started taking jobs he could do from home so he could be there when David got home from school. Alina found herself opening up about how lonely it was at the top, how success had become a prison of other people's expectations. "The worst part," she admitted, "is that I love my work. I'm good at it. But everyone acts like I have to choose, be a good doctor or a good mom, like I can't possibly do both." "Who says you have to be good at both right away?" Marcus asked. "When I started teaching music privately, I made every mistake you can think of. Charged too little, promised too much, almost lost a student's whole recital piece because I forgot to save it. But each mistake taught me something." Sophia stirred in Elena's arms, making soft baby sounds that weren't quite crying. Without being asked, Marcus reached into his carry-on and pulled out a small stuffed rabbit, worn soft with love. "This was David's when he was little," Marcus said. "We bring it for emergencies." "Mr. Ears," David said. "But Dad, that's special." "Exactly why Sophia should have him for now," Marcus said. "Special things are meant to be shared." Watching him gently tuck the rabbit next to Sophia, Alina felt something change in her chest. This man, who had every reason to hold tight to the pieces of his past, was teaching his son to be generous even when life had taken so much from them. It was a kind of strength she'd never seen in her hospital meetings. As the plane began coming down toward Chicago, the cabin crew got ready for landing. The same passengers who'd been shooting angry looks earlier were now stealing glances at Marcus with something like respect. The gray-haired woman even caught Alina's eye and whispered, "Beautiful baby." Jessica came over with a warm smile. "We'll be landing in about 10 minutes. I wanted to thank you, sir," she said to Marcus. "You turned what could have been a terrible flight into something really special." After landing, as passengers stood to get their bags, Marcus helped Elena with her things while David carefully held Sophia's diaper bag. It was such a simple thing, but Elena realized she couldn't remember the last time someone had helped her without wanting something back. In the walkway off the plane, Elena turned to Marcus, suddenly not wanting this unexpected connection to end. "Would you and David like to share a ride? I have a car waiting. It's the least I can do." Marcus hesitated, and she saw the pride there, the same pride that made her refuse help even when she was drowning. "That's kind of you, but we're going pretty far outside the city. That's way out of your way." "Actually, I'd like to know you made it home safe, both of you. And Sophia seems pretty attached to Mr. Ears. Would you like to come up for that hot chocolate David mentioned?" Fair warning, our apartment is nothing fancy, and there might be sheet music on the floor. "Dad cleaned today," David protested. "It's very neat, and we have the good cocoa, the kind with little marshmallows." "I love little marshmallows," Alina said. The apartment was exactly what she expected and nothing like it at all. Yes, it was small and simple, but it was also warm and lived in a way her big house never was. David's artwork covered the refrigerator. Photos lined the shelves. Marcus and Alice on their wedding day, David as a baby, family trips to the lake. This was a home shaped by love and loss, and the decision to keep going anyway. While Marcus made cocoa and David showed Elena every single one of his songs, explaining the stories behind them with 9-year-old intensity, Elena found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Sophia stirred in Elena's arms, making soft baby sounds that weren't quite crying. Without being asked, Marcus reached into his carry-on and pulled out a small stuffed rabbit, worn soft with love. "You should come to my music show," David announced suddenly. "I'm playing a song I wrote about how music can make sad people feel better. Dad's been helping me with the hard parts." "David," Marcus said gently, "Elena is very busy. She's an important doctor." But Elena found herself saying, "When is it?" "Next Friday at 7, David said eagerly. "There's a reception after, but Dad has to leave early for a student, so I'll be the only one without someone at the party. But that's okay, because Mrs. Johnson says I can help her clean up instead." The matter-of-fact acceptance in the child's voice broke Elena's heart a little bit. She looked at Marcus, who was trying to hide his own pain at not being able to stay for the whole event. "What if I came?" Elena heard herself say. "To the reception, I mean. If that's okay with your dad." David's face lit up like the city skyline. "Really? You'd come to my school?" "David, we can't ask," Marcus started, "but you're not asking. I'm offering. That is, if it's okay with you." Something passed between them, an understanding that this was about more than a music show. This was about two broken families maybe finding a way to help each other heal.
Over the next weeks, what started as a music show invitation grew into something more. Elena would text Marcus when Sophia had a difficult night, and he'd call with advice and encouragement. Marcus would send photos of David's music projects, and Elena would share them with her confused medical colleagues who couldn't understand why their serious heart surgeon was suddenly interested in third-grade compositions. The day of the music show, Elena arrived with Sophia in a carrier, having cleared her entire evening. David's song was beautiful, a simple melody about how music could turn sadness into something bearable. But what struck Elena most was watching Marcus with the children. How patient he was, how he made every child feel talented and important. During the reception, while Marcus had to leave for his student, Elena sat with David and helped serve cookies to other families. She watched this little boy who'd lost his mother navigate the world with such grace and courage, and she thought about what kind of person Sophia might become with examples like this in her life. Later that evening, Marcus texted, "David hasn't stopped talking about how you came to the reception. Thank you for giving him that. And thank you for the photos. I hated missing it." Elena looked at Sophia asleep in her crib, Mr. Ears still tucked beside her, even though Elena had bought her a dozen other stuffed animals. She typed back, "Thank you for showing me I don't have to do this alone." Their friendship deepened over months. Marcus would bring David over for dinner, and Elena would discover the joy of family meals that weren't eaten between phone calls. Elena would invite them to the hospital picnic, where David charmed every doctor by asking genuinely interested questions about their work. Sophia and David developed their own bond, the little boy appointing himself hip protector and song singer. One evening, almost a year after that flight, Elena was hosting a charity dinner for her hospital's new children's program. She'd invited Marcus and David, insisting they were her personal guests. Marcus had worried that he didn't own a suit, but Elena had laughed and said the party needed more real people and fewer penguin costumes. Watching Marcus help David with his tie, seeing him naturally take Sophia when the baby got fussy during Elena's speech, she realized something had changed completely in her life. The hard lines between doctor and mother had dissolved. She could be both, not perfectly, but really. During the dinner, one of her hospital bosses pulled her aside. "Vasquez, I have to say, you seem different lately, more grounded. It's good for the program image, this family-friendly approach." Elena looked across the room where Marcus was teaching Sophia and David some kind of complicated clapping game, all three of them giggling. "It's not an approach," she said quietly. "It's just life." The moment that changed everything came 3 months later. Elena had been in surgery all day, and her babysitter had gotten sick. In desperation, she had called Marcus, who immediately offered to pick up Sophia from daycare. When she finally made it home at 9 that evening, she found Marcus in her living room, Sophia asleep on his chest, while he helped David with his math homework on the coffee table. "I made dinner," he said simply. "It's in the kitchen. Nothing fancy, just pasta, but I figured you probably hadn't eaten." Standing there in her doorway, still in her scrubs and tired from a 12-hour surgery, looking at this man who had stepped into her life without agenda or expectation, Elena felt the last of her walls crumble. This was what she had been missing. Not just help with Sophia, but partnership.
Someone who showed up not because they had to, but because that's what you did for people you cared about. "Marcus," she said, her voice thick with emotion. He looked up, worry immediately flooding his features. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than okay," she said, crossing to sit beside him, careful not to wake Sophia. "I'm home." David looked up from his homework, that 9 going on 40 wisdom shining in his eyes. "Does this mean we're a family now?" Marcus started to correct him, to explain about boundaries and friendship, but Alina stopped him with a hand on his arm. "What do you think, David? Would you like that?" The little boy considered this seriously. "Sophia needs a big brother, and Dad needs someone to remind him to eat vegetables, and you need us because Sophia can't be an only child. They're weird." Marcus laughed, the sound rich and warm. Elena was laughing too, and Sophia woke up, gurgling happily, and suddenly they were all laughing, the sound filling the house that had been quiet for too long. "We're already a family," Marcus said, softly, meeting Elena's eyes. "We have been since that flight. We just took the long way to figure it out." 6 months later, at a small ceremony in Millennium Park with only a handful of guests, Marcus and Elena exchanged vows while David held Sophia, who was now walking and determined to chase every pigeon in sight. Jessica, the flight attendant who'd witnessed their first meeting, cried openly from her seat. In his vows, Marcus said, "You taught me that strength isn't about doing everything alone. It's about having the courage to let others in. You gave David a mother figure who shows him that women can save lives and still lead with kindness." Elena, who'd written her vows like a medical presentation, forgot every word and spoke from her heart instead. "You showed me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. You gave Sophia a father who teaches by example that gentleness is the greatest strength. You gave me a family when I'd forgotten what that even meant." As they kissed, David announced loudly, "Finally! Do you know how long I've been waiting for this?" The guests erupted in laughter, and Sophia chose that moment to take her first steps toward them, arms outstretched, as if she too had been waiting for this moment of completion. The medical journals had a field day with the story. "Heart doctor finds her own heart healed," ran one headline. But Elena didn't care anymore about what others wrote. She had her own story now, messier and more complicated than any medical case, but infinitely more rewarding. At the hospital, she started new programs for single parents and on-site childcare, programs that some administrators worried would cost too much money. But doctor satisfaction actually increased as staff felt more supported, more human. Marcus's music teaching grew with Elena's business guidance, though he insisted on keeping it small enough that he could still do school pickup. 3 years after that flight, they sat in the same business class cabin, this time traveling together for a family vacation. Sophia, now an energetic 4-year-old, was coloring quietly, while David, 12 and even more thoughtful, read a book about famous musicians. Their youngest, a son named Alex, after Elena's father, slept peacefully in Elena's arms. A young father across the aisle was struggling with a crying baby. Without hesitation, Marcus stood up, that same calm presence ready to help. But this time, Elena stood with him. "We've got this," she told the scared father, remembering her own terror years ago. "Between us, we've logged thousands of hours with crying babies. First rule, breathe. Second rule, remember that every parent on this plane has been where you are." As they helped calm the baby, David looked up from his book and smiled. "You know," he told Sophia, "this is how Mom and Dad met. You were the crying baby." Sophia looked horrified. "I was not." "Were too. Dad says you sounded like a fire truck." Watching their children argue playfully, watching Marcus teach another parent the holding technique that had saved them all that night, Elena thought about the journey from that first flight to now. She'd boarded that plane as a doctor struggling with a crying baby, convinced she had to face everything alone. She had landed with the beginning of a family she didn't know she needed. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing their descent into Orlando, where they'd spend a week at Disney World, something the old Elena would have considered a waste of valuable work time. But she had learned that memories were the only currency that truly mattered, and that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. As they prepared to land, Marcus took her hand, their wedding rings catching the light. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. Elena looked at their children, Sophia showing her coloring to anyone who'd look, David mothering baby Alex with the same gentle confidence Marcus had shown with Sophia, and thought about all the medical conferences she'd missed, all the late-night surgeries she had turned down, all the ways her life had become smaller and infinitely larger at the same time. "Only one," she said, squeezing his hand, "that I didn't cry on a plane sooner." The plane touched down smoothly, and as they gathered their things, so many more things now, the happy chaos of a full life, Elena caught their reflection in the window. They looked like any other family. A bit frazzled, definitely tired, but undeniably together. The young father they'd helped approached them at baggage claim. "Thank you," he said, tears in his eyes. "You gave me hope that it gets easier." "Not easier," Elena corrected gently. "Just better. So much better." As they walked through the airport, Sophia on Marcus's shoulders, David pushing Alex's stroller while telling him a story about brave doctors who saved hearts and brave teachers who saved souls with music, Elena felt her phone buzz in her pocket with what was surely an urgent email about some medical emergency that needed her immediate attention. She let it buzz. She was already attending to something urgent, this beautiful, messy, imperfect life they'd built from one moment of kindness on an airplane. Everything else could wait. After all, she had learned from the best that sometimes the most important decisions aren't made in operating rooms, but in the choice to stand up, cross the aisle, and offer help to a stranger who might just become your whole world. Thank you for joining Elena, Marcus, Sophia, and David on their incredible journey from strangers to family. Stories like these remind us that kindness costs nothing, but can change everything. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments below. Have you ever experienced an unexpected moment of kindness from a stranger that changed your day? Or maybe you were the one who stepped up to help someone else. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss these heartwarming stories that celebrate the power of human connection. Your support helps me bring you more tales of hope, love, and the beautiful ways our lives can intertwine when we least expect it. Until next time, remember, you never know when you might be someone's answer to prayer or when a stranger might become your greatest blessing.